Chapter 26. Callie pulled up into the driveway and turned the key. She sat for a moment and stared at the house. It was a crimson scarlet red color with a sharply slanted roof, which was graced with a cacophony of Christmas lights that twinkled and sparkled like colored stars. It reminded her of her own house, with her own Christmas lights, and she smiled a soft smile. She loved Christmas. It reminded her of when her family would huddle around the tree singing songs and opening presents. For 20 years they had used the same tree, a tall, broad pine that smelled faintly of pine! She loved that tree, so much so that she never took it down. For 30 years she kept the tree just as it was, awash with lights and shiny balls. Henry thought her daft, and oft his accounting friends would come over for Easter dinner and see the tree standing proud in the corner with its lights and balls. And Henry would try to quickly shoo them to the dining room, but they would have none of that, as they'd stand before the tree and rub their chins in thought and say in their funny accents, "It's over, you know!" But Callie would just smile her soft smile as she spooned out the mashed potatoes. Callie stepped out of the car and shook the chill from her voluptuous bones. The snow crackled beneath her feet as she made her way along the driveway and up the icy steps, taking each with care. It reminded her of the church and the icy steps, only much more so. She knocked on the door, which made a muffled, hollow sound beneath her knuckles, like the sound of an unripe cantaloupe. She was picky about her cantaloupes. The door opened, and Callie was greeted with her friend Yvonne. Callie smiled and shifted voluptuously as she stared at her friend. She reminded her of a volcano, her molten red hair flowing moltenly down her back and over the sandy white beaches of her shoulders, as hair is wont to do. Yvonne smiled back, her lips glossed in a shade of lipstick that reminded Callie of the house paint. "Come in," Yvonne said, her scintillating green eyes dancing playfully in the evening darkness. Callie closed the door behind her and tossed her coat onto a nearby chair. She took a seat on the couch and ran her fingers along the coffee table, breathing deeply the dark and heady aroma of furniture polish. Yvonne slinkered towards the kitchen. "Dinner's almost ready. Make yourself at home." Callie stood and straightened her cashmere dress and proceeded to a small bar on the other side of the living room. The plush carpeting squished between her toes, and she smiled a soft smile. It reminded her of the dreamy times she had spent with her beloved Henry, shopping for carpeting. She'd happily skip between rows of pastel blues and ruddy browns and giggle as she rubbed her cheek against their fuzziness. The salesmen were always quick to help her, no doubt as delighted with carpeting as she was, and cheerfully waved goodbye when they left, a roll of bunny-patterned carpet hoisted on one of Henry's broad shoulders, and Callie clinging lovingly to the other. Callie examined the bottles and swished the contents of a few. She tapped her chin and foot as she pondered over her decision. Scotch? No. Vodka? No. Rum? No. Tequila? No. Gin? No. Red wine? No. White wine? No. Rosé wine? No. Sherry? No. Very dry sherry? No. Brandy? No. Grand Marnier? No. Vermouth? No. Creme de cacao? No. Creme de menthe? No. Schnapps? No. Whiskey? No. Bourbon? No. Rye? No. Yick! Callie sashayed towards the bookshelf, with its myriad of books. She ran her fingertips along the spines and was amazed at the wide variety that Yvonne had collected. Tall books, thin books, fat books, short books, books with brown covers, books with white covers, books without covers, hard books, soft books, hard books that felt like soft books, everything in between. It reminded her of a library with lots of books. Yvonne emerged from the kitchen bearing a large plate with a large ham on top, which had small cherries and small pieces of pineapple stuck into it with wooden toothpicks. The scent of ham and cherry and pineapple wafted languidly towards Callie, and she breathed deeply of its heavenly scent. "It smells heavenly," Callie noted, and Yvonne grinned impishly. Callie took a seat at the table and unfurled her napkin. She placed it on her lap as she was always taught, and arranged her silverware just so. She poured herself a glass of milk from the fridge and began scooping out potatoes for the both of them. Yvonne poured herself a drink and melted into the chair across from Callie. She brushed a strand of molten hair from her eyes and proceeded to carve the ham. Callie watched intently. Juice streamed from the ham in rivulets, like saliva drooling from the fierce jaws of a wild dingo, poised over the dead carcass of its prey in the dingo-eat-dingo world. "It smells heavenly," Callie said. Yvonne dropped a slab onto Callie's eagerly awaiting plate and garnished it with a cherry. Callie popped the cherry,
oh my,
into her mouth and smiled a soft smile. Its sweetness reminded her of sweet things. And that made her smile. Yvonne dabbed at the corner of her mouth with a napkin and washed down the ham with a chug of wine. "I bought that lovely dress today," she chirped excitedly. "Which one?" Callie inquired. "The lovely one," Yvonne explained.
"Did you get a new dress?"
"What does think of it?" Callie queried. Yvonne giggled like a giggly girl. "He thinks it's lovely," she responded as she shifted voluptuously in her seat. "You're a lucky one," Callie commented, tossing her mane voluptuously. She sighed vehemently. "I do so really very much miss Henry. At least he didn't leave you broke." Yvonne grunted as she struggled with a particularly fatty piece of ham. I looked across the table at Yvonne nervously and stood making my way to the living room window. I could see the colors of Christmas blinking rhythmically in the window's reflection, and it eased my heart somewhat, though not a lot. I swallowed nervously as I tried to think of the best way to say to my friend what I wanted to say, because it was hard to say. Words stumbled in my mind like clumsy children falling down a flight of stairs. And I went to the bathroom to relieve my increasingly incessant bladder. The smell of lilac assaulted me, and I smiled softly. I sat and tinkled. The sound reminded me of my sister's wedding. It was a grand affair with balloons and streamers and clowns. And my sister all dressed up in a brilliant white dress, and the soothing tinkling sound of the raindrops in the punch bowl. I returned to find Yvonne spooning gobs of custard into a bowl. "Dessert?" she questioned. Callie shook her head. "I'm a vegetarian." Yvonne nodded vigorously and took her custard to the living room. "Is something wrong?" she asked me. Callie baby-stepped her way to the living room. "It's about my stocks." "What about them?" Yvonne muffled through her custard. Callie stammered. Her gut knotted, and she took a bite of Yvonne's custard. She loved the cool fruitiness on her tongue, and she smiled softly. "I want to sell them," she finally said at last. "Why?" Yvonne spewed. Callie took a seat at the kitchen table. "I love it, Henry," she insisted, really meaning it. "But it's time for me to move on to greener pastures." Yvonne shrugged voluptuously. "So sell them." "Ah," Callie said knowingly, "therein lies the rub. I don't want to be seen like I'm bailing out of a sinking ship, and I heard through the cherry vine that you might be able to help me, if you get my meaning," she hinted with knowing winks. No, Yvonne said with a deep negativity. The corners of Callie's mouth drooped like saggy breasts. Why not? She interrogated. Because, Yvonne quipped. Because the word reminded Callie of grade school and Mrs. Freeman's history class, which she learned at the Cotton Gin, and asked why it was called a cotton gin when it had nothing to do with gin. And Mrs. Freeman glared at her as she often did, and with stern arms folded across her rigid chest, she said because, and left it at that, and Callie smiled softly. Callie pleaded. I'm sorry, Callie. Yvonne sighed sorrowfully. I wish I could help you, but I have my own green pastures to think about. Roberto and I, what we have been a beautiful thing, a truly beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing, and I can't risk losing such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing. Callie's eyes narrowed so imperceptibly that no one even noticed. Even for a friend, she warned. You're a beautiful friend. Yvonne sighed. But what Roberto and I share are more beautifully beautiful than our commonly beautiful friendship. Callie rubbed her suddenly throbbing head with her fingertips in slow 2 3/4-inch circles. Follow him! She half spat, 1/4 shrieked, 1/4 shouted, and she snatched her coat from the couch. She flung open the door and stormed outside, her bosom heaving with rage, stopping only long enough to smash a twinkling Christmas light with the heel of her shoe. Georgia on my mind. The Mutant Museum would like to thank its donors, particularly Break System BSE and Michael Maris, for their generosity. The Mutant Museum is dependent on the generosity of these donors and the support of viewers like you to continue its operations.